Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for the world champion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the warm welcome. This is a nice spot. You wouldn't expect to see this in a tent.
So we have a huge crowd waiting to listen to you, speak to you. I polled them in advance. I said, what question would you ask Lewis Hamilton? And they said to me, what is the mentality of a winner? And that's the question to start with.
Well, I think the mentality of a winner, I think for me, it's always been wanting to do something different. I don't want to just exist. I want to ultimately live to my full potential. I think it's just wanting to be great in some way, shape, or form. And I think over time, after reading certain books and being inspired by people, I realized that I think we're all a bright light, and it's up to us how bright we shine that light. Of course, there are obstacles that we all come across, but I've been really fortunate. I've had a great family who have supported me the whole way. Formula One is it's a great thing being in Formula One, but getting to Formula One, it's probably the most expensive sport to enter into. And I remember my dad, we had no comprehension of how expensive it was going to be when we started. And my dad and my stepmom remortgaged the house like 3 times. My dad had 4 jobs. Their whole life savings went on racing. And so back then you would think they were completely crazy in doing that. And a lot of parents do it today still. And it's so different compared to other sports. A bull, tennis, it's obviously a lot less expensive initially. But I think my dad personally, my dad didn't want his kids to struggle the way he did. He worked for the British Rail. My granddad came over from the Caribbean, and I think it was just a really tough life for them. And he didn't want to. He just wanted to work as hard as he could to provide a better opportunity for his kids. And so he's really the hero. I'm sitting here kind of as a spokesman for him, really. But yeah.
And in terms of your own education, so tell us a little bit about that. What schools you went to, what subjects you enjoyed. Was there a teacher that you loved?
There was. It happened to be the lady. There was a lady called Miss McEwen. She was my favorite teacher. And she was just always a very positive person for me at school. But I struggled in school. I'm dyslexic. Didn't find out I was dyslexic till I was 17. And being that I was racing, I was always racing. I started racing when I was 8. And it started out just the go-kart I had. We drove it around a car park at B&Q, a DIY store. And then we went to a kart track. And then it became like something I did after school hours. And then we started to get more and more serious, and it happened every weekend. And then when you start racing competitively, you have to practice on a Friday. So you have to leave Thursday night after school. We traveled across the country at the time was in the back of the car. But then we got an RV, a caravan, and it made school very tough because I had to miss the Friday. So I was always behind. I was always trying to catch up. So we had asked the school if they could help with extra lessons either before or after, and they weren't very supportive. And I got signed when I was 13, and my dad went to the school and said, look, we have this incredible opportunity. It's never been given to any other youngster to be a part of a Formula 1 team. We need your support and maybe a little bit of extra time off, and he wouldn't support it. So what then happened was my dad took me out of school for those Fridays, and I'd get back on Monday, and I'd be in detention all day facing the wall. And so then I got back to class. So I had like three days a week at school, so I was constantly behind. Fortunately, the McLaren who sponsored me, they provided me with a private tutor, so I'd have private tutor lessons at 6:30 in the morning before school and after school. So you can imagine as a kid, I hated life because no kid generally wants to do extra lessons. But I'm grateful I did. And afterwards, I went to college to study things I wanted to do. I wanted to do music, which at the beginning my dad wanted me to do history. When I came to having to choose my sessions, and then also French. And then I started racing cars, and it just got busier and busier, and I had less and less time available to do it, and I was struggling to juggle both. So at the time, we ended up doing racing as a focus, which obviously paid off, but most people that do it, it does not. You know, there's only 20 seats in Formula One, and there are thousands and thousands of kids that are trying to do racing. The worst thing, I think, at the moment is that it is very expensive, and parents take their children out of school. So something I really want to get involved in is trying, because like the FIA, our governing body, they're always working on safety. But I spoke to them recently, and I think you're missing a real key issue at the moment, is that I'm guessing it's at least 95%, maybe 98% of the individuals that are getting into racing, they drop out of school, or the parents take them out of school, they focus on racing completely, and they don't make it. And then they have no qualifications, so then they have no opportunities afterwards. So pretty much every other racer that I raced with when I was younger, they might be working in the store today, they're doing less than, they'll definitely be struggling compared to what their real potential was. And that's because of the schooling situation, and we shouldn't be able to give kids their racing license without getting through their education, and that should be plan A. And so that's something I want to try and get involved in with our sport.
It's a really interesting point you raised regarding the what you need to do to achieve success in your field. You're right to say that 99% would fail, is what you're saying. Now, given that is the fact, when children are going through school, what encouragement would you give parents to actually take that risk?
To do what I've done? I wouldn't. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure my dad, if he was sitting here, he'd say, "Don't do it," because it cost him a fortune, and the stress. He would say that he lost a lot of hairs during that whole process. I was racing from 8, so I mean I've been racing two-thirds of my life, and I think it's great that my cousins for example, are into football, but when they tell me how much effort they're putting in, I'm saying that's great, but just make sure they stay in school, because there's so many kids trying to be footballers. The chance of them not getting through and actually using all that effort and work and turning it into getting a real job is difficult. So but I do also think for kids, I think that we've got to let them blossom in their own way. Follow the I was very restricted as a kid. My dad was, in trying to protect me, was quite controlling, which I don't regret. I think ultimately I'm grateful for the values in which he instilled with me. But I really feel like our story is quite unique in the racing world, because most of the people that I race against, they've come from wealthier families. I can imagine for my kids one day when I have children, it's easier for them to get to where I am off of the name, or because financially I'm in a much better position than I was when I started. But my kid's going to have it very tough, because I'm going to give him the exact same opportunity I had if he does want to race. If I have a kid that wants to race. My first go-kart was like a 5th or 6th hand go-kart that my dad bought from a newspaper, one of those back ads, and he went to the DIY store. He shaved the cart down, made it all look brand new, and it was all bent. He bent it back into shape, and we turned up. Has anyone seen Cool Runnings?
Yes.
Okay, this is my favorite movie, because it's kind of the story of my life a little bit, because Formula One and motor racing has always been a predominantly white-dominated sport. So when we arrived on the scene, people were like, "What are these guys doing here?" And when you look at that movie, they arrived at the top of the hill with a rusty bobsled. That was exactly our go-kart. When we pulled up, the boot was open of the car, and the cart was shoved in the back. So we looked, we're not professional at all, and everyone else was more used to it, and. But then we turned heads, and eventually people started to recognize us. And my dad was great. He went walking around asking people for, because we didn't have the understanding of how to set the car up. So my dad became our mechanic. So he was learning something new as well. So it's been an incredible journey for both of us and when I was at school, I wanted to learn about mechanical science. So I mean, for me, now I work in Formula One, there's 1,600 people in my team. In 2 factories. One side of the factory is building engines, and the other side is building the car for two people. It's absolutely insane. So there's great opportunities, but also something that I'm really conscious of is in my team, in that 1,600 people, there's very little diversity. And so I remember when I was at school, kids would ask me, where are you going this weekend? I was like, I was racing. They didn't understand. They thought I was going to the theme park. And there was definitely no, particularly like my family, from my dad's side, they wouldn't even comprehend trying to be an engineer. And so, but now there's kids, when I go to different events, there's kids from different ethnicities, families coming up to me saying, oh, my kid wants to be a racing driver, or my daughter's trying to be an engineer, wants to be an aerodynamicist in your team. So I like that, but still I think we need to do more.
And when you were a child, were you a scientist? Were you a musician? Were you an artist? Do you have a preference?
When I was young, I was a little bit crazy. I was all over. I have a lot of energy, so I was all over the place. I was in all the sports. I was in the sports side was really what I really particularly killed it. And then I did music, and I started playing guitar when I was 13. As I said, I wanted to study music, but my dad, when it came to the point where you had to choose an avenue, which direction you wanted to go, I wasn't given the opportunity to decide. I can imagine why my dad would have done that, but it would have been better to have, I think I would have preferred to have gone the music way, because that's what I love and that's what I still do today, but I'm playing catch up now.
So what are you listening to at the moment?
I listened to, when I was at school, my dad's from the Caribbean, from Grenada, and so I grew up around a lot of reggae. So that was really the first kind of music that I was into. But my dad had saved up and got this really great hi-fi, and so I learnt about, Marvin Gaye, I had Elvis, I had a real mixture. And then when I started playing, before I started playing guitar, I was crazy into hip-hop. So I was heavily influenced by hip-hop and kind of street, urban music. And then I started playing guitar, and I realized I couldn't play any of the songs that I was listening to in hip-hop. And so I had to kind of started to open my mind. So then I started to learn to play the Beatles, Rolling Stones. And so I think it was quite a good experience for me to open my my viewpoint. And so now I listen to all sorts. So when I'm racing, sometimes I'm listening to opera, sometimes I listen to jazz, sometimes I listen to rock and roll, hip-hop, whatever it may be. I think the more I can, the more I learn musically.
So we have I would say, a global decline in arts budgets for schools. Not just related to one country. I think many people over here would agree that is what is happening around the world. How do you feel about that? If music was such a great outlet for you and such a great inspiration for you, how do we combat that? How do we convince policymakers that the arts are worth investing in?
I think creativity is one of the most important things for individuals, people of our age, but also for kids. It's stimulating. It's a way to express yourself. It's a way to really discover who you are. And I'm grateful that as I said, I feel like I was a bit of a late blossomer, but I think I'm meeting kids today of whether they're 15 or 18 years old, and they're so much further ahead than I was. But I think really we have to encourage creativity. I think it's enjoyable. I think all of us, we have, our jobs that hopefully you will like your jobs. I mean, I love my job, but I get to race a Formula 1 car, so it's kind of a little bit crazy. But one of the most exciting parts of my job is actually when I get back to go to the factory and I get to work with these guys, and I'm constantly learning from all these engineers who have gone to Harvard and Cambridge, and I'm having to learn, when I got to Formula 1, I had to learn a bit of a new language. How do I explain what I'm experiencing on the track and give that to an engineer so that they can put it into technical use and design a car? So I go around the factory and I go and see all the different departments, and I'm learning all the time. And also then I got to the point that I started to get involved in the design. So like I designed my steering wheel, for example. And so I bring a lot of practicality to these guys who are all about numbers, and it also helps me be, and tap into a bit of creative side.
Tell me, how do you, not that you've experienced much of this, but how do you deal with loss? So when you lose a race, how do you recover from that?
When I was younger, I can't say that I like losing today, but it is a part of the process. And when I was a kid, I hated it a lot more than I do now, for sure. But I think it's because as I'm older, I appreciate it more. And winning is a great thing, succeeding is a great thing, but you're nothing if you haven't gone through the journey. The journey is really about building. People used to say, oh, it's all character building, and it is sometimes difficult to really understand what that means until you get through that rough patch and you get to the point where you succeed. Then you're like, now I know. So each year, I still have the same skill set as a driver. Of course, I've honed in on it, but from a kid, I was always talented. But to home in on the other areas, now I have the experience, the knowledge that I apply to it. So I drive better than I've ever driven before. I'm able to apply myself. That's why I'm performing. Really, I'm kind of in the peak period of my career, and that's a great, great feeling.
When the day does come, when you do retire from Formula One, which we hope is not in a very long time, what do you think your future career will be?
So that's an interesting one. So I don't know how it is for every sportsman, but particularly in Formula One, every racing driver that's stopped, and I think it's similar for maybe NBA, some tennis players. Often, you've done the sport your whole life, pretty much, and so you end up staying in the sport, doing commentary or, I personally, not that it's a bad thing or anything, but I personally do not want to have to be talking about someone else racing. A lot of the commentators are criticizing. They might be drivers, but they're criticizing other drivers. I'd rather be encouraging of other drivers. But right now I'm really working on trying to understand the other things that I'm into, the other things that I'm passionate about, things that I would have put aside as a kid that I had to sacrifice to be where I am today. And I've had this 25 years, whatever it is, to build the skill that I'm using today for my job, but I'm playing catch up on the other things that I really, and they're mostly really creative kind of projects. So the ultimate goal is to have continue to build my brand, then tap into some opportunities, and ultimately have some sort of business that I can work on and move on to. So when I stop, I don't have to look back or feel. I want to feel proud that I've obviously done a good job up until that point, and be excited about the next chapter, rather than stopping and thinking, okay, now I'm going to be doing interviewing. Kind of feels like it's going to be downhill from then on. But I'm really excited because I have some projects in the pipeline that I'm working on, some design stuff that I'm involved in with some brands, and that's, and getting to work with people from different walks of life. So obviously it's very hard to cross over into the fashion world. I'm now at like a lot of the fashion shows, really working with, I get to meet all the different fashion designers when I get behind, and I'm trying to get some time with them and learn something from them, trying to be a bit of an intern. I think, you look at Kanye West, went from music over to fashion, and he became an intern. And so I'm kind of with that kind of mentality. Whatever it is, I'm happy to start from the bottom, but there's I think the future's bright for me afterwards.
So I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to ask a couple of people to ask questions. Please don't all put your hand up at the same time. I realize that you'll be disappointed. But, we're here at this conference talking about how we prepare young people for 2030 and beyond, for the future. And you've spoken a lot about certain traits like resilience, persistence, creativity. Do you have a view in terms of those kind of things and how you do effectively prepare young people for that future?
I'm not a politician. I don't know the right way forward. I think just from my personal experience, my schooling, as I said, was difficult. And now I have so much more appreciation for how difficult it is for a teacher. I think as a kid, you're completely oblivious to that, and all you care about is enjoying yourself. But, the teachers have such a tough job managing large groups of kids that are just reckless, or just, trying to express themselves, but, can't sit still. So my admiration for teachers is so much greater than it potentially was as a kid. But more so because I had teachers who were really negative towards me. In a school, as I said, there was almost 2,000 kids. I think it's probably 1,500 kids or so. Again, was not diverse. There was maybe 4 black kids, so we really stood out, and we didn't get a lot of love from the leader, the headmaster of our school. But I think, and another thing, for example, with the curriculum, the stuff that you learn today, that I was learning at school, I didn't feel that it benefited me, or when I got older. I didn't understand how to do my taxes. When all these certain things started to happen when I got older, and I was completely I just didn't have the skill. So it's a new skill set that I had to learn. So I don't know. I think there's things that could be implemented that are better. There are, as I said, for example, for my sport, even for other sports, kids should not be taken out of school. I've gone and traveled around the world and seen different countries, third world countries that kids are really don't even have the opportunity for education, which is, I think, is a bit like Nelson Mandela was really pushing that. I think education is key, and you've got to provide them an opportunity in order to grow and create an opportunity for their future. But I think what's going to happen in 2030 is only 12 years away. It's not really that far. I don't know how technology is going to shift by then, but you look at companies like BlackBerry, for example, who were there, and now they're kind of not so much there. There's going to be some interesting things that come along. I know kids today, I think, are using computers rather than handwriting. I'm more old school. I think handwriting and books. I still read a book rather than an iPad, book on an iPad, for example. So I don't know. I think trying to keep the basics, keep the core values in the teaching, being creative, but more importantly, I think positivity. Somehow the teachers have to be positive. It's really about encouragement. And it goes such a long way. When you see someone, you're smiling and you're like, hey, you're doing a great job, or can I help you? That makes a big difference. And there was the reason that lady I said, Miss McEwen, was my favorite. She was beautiful, but she was a really, she dressed well, and she smelled beautiful, and she had such a positive, she had such a positive impact on me, and she gave me her time, which I know she could have, she probably gave to everyone, but she gave me extra time and care, and she was one of the fewer teachers that did that.
Thank you so much. I want to actually introduce my friend Rodrigo Mendes from Brazil over here. Rodrigo is in a wheelchair, as you see, but when he was young, he was a sportsman. Last year or the year before, using technology, TV Global actually did a reality program on him where he drove a Formula One car up to 80 kilometers per hour using his mind. Now,
I read about it.
You read about it?
Yeah. I was like,
So
how in the world how did you do that?
Can we get a mic up here, because I want Rodrigo to ask a question. Can I borrow that?
Yeah.
Lou, can you help?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Lewis. Hi. It's an honor to meet you. And well, I heard that you're a fan of Ayrton Senna. So, the Brazilians are recognized by being very, very good pilots. So, don't get it wrong, but I would like to invite you to race against me. And please choose the track, okay? Whenever you want, I'll be there.
Can I use the same the technology that you're using? Could I use that technology? Can we fight with our minds?
Sure, Olivier over
Yes,
here.
Olivier is the president of the company, so he can arrange that for you, but as you want.
Oh yeah, listen, it has to be the same car and the same gear, so
Exactly.
it will be mind
Exactly.
control against mind control.
Perfect.
Sounds good? Do we have a deal
I'm very
here?
much up for it.
Fantastic.
Oh, thanks a lot.
No, thank you so much.
We're going to take one more question. Who wants to go? We're going to go over here with this gentleman over here. Can we get the mic? Olivia, if you just don't mind giving this gentleman over here. Then this lady in the middle over here. Olivia, if you give your mic to her.
Thanks. Lewis, obviously congratulations on your Formula 1 win from last year.
Thank you.
You spoke a lot about when you're under scrutiny as a teenager. As a teacher, we see a lot of students who have these ups and downs. You in particular with your story, you mentioned that a couple of times. So when you were younger, when you were 13, 14, and you felt the world was against you, what did you tell yourself to make sure that you kept yourself going?
I actually, I did things such as, I was bullied at school from infant school already. From like 6 years old, I was being bullied by the bigger kids. And I entered into karate, so I went and did a discipline, which again is quite creative and sporty, and that helped give me a lot of discipline. But I was very fortunate, obviously. I had my dad, who not necessarily, my parents split when I was 2, but my mum was very supportive emotionally, and my dad was very supportive, like encouraging, like not. He didn't really care about the emotional side of things. He was like, you can do anything you put your mind to, and it's down to you. It's your life. If you want to sit and pick up that book and learn something and improve and learn and grow, then it's right there. You have all the tools right in front of you. Or you can just sit there and do nothing, and you won't be going anywhere. So it was an interesting dynamic that he had, because as a kid, you kind of can maybe see that negatively. But I think, again, I was also very one, and even still today, just not one that, when, you know, for example, when a teacher told me that I was never going to amount to nothing, or it may have even been like another carton driver's, another carter's dad said, you just don't have it. You're not going to make it. And I'm like, dude, I'm 10 years old. Well, how can you tell me that? I always like to prove people wrong. And I don't know where that came from, but maybe it came from my dad, but I still have that today. So, you know, I got to Formula One, and getting into Formula One, it's almost like you have to be a square, a certain shape. This is a shape that every racing driver has to be. You have to train this way, you have to speak this way, you have to look this way, otherwise you don't get in. And that's the way I was led to believe it. So I got into there, and then I was able to grow into who I am today. And I think the cool thing today is that, you look at a lot of the older drivers, the kind of legends that you might see on TV today, and they're always criticizing me. Oh, he can't do that and perform, but I do. I like proving people wrong, and and that's really.
What's the worst thing that's ever been said about you that has really hurt you?
I don't know. There's a lot that's been said. It's been, this is my 12th year in Formula One, so it's been a long, long journey. So I like that let's go, for example, Nicky Lauda, who's now a really, really good friend of mine, who didn't know me initially, and generally, I guess, naturally, as humans, we judge before we've actually can meet someone or seen something. So he'd already had preconceived ideas of who I was, based on image or how I've dressed, or I don't really know, but very stereotyping. And then we met, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're just like me. My mental attitude towards racing, my focus on the attention to detail about the car setup, all these different things and he couldn't believe it." And that's really when our relationship started. But before that, he was a little bit negative towards me. But then that's really the same how it is with other people. So I do like meeting people and trying to shift their mindset. There's a lot of people to meet, but I mean, there are always going to be people criticizing. I honestly think that, when I was at school, it was a reflection of the difficult time that my teachers were having. So I forgive my teachers today. I hope they're watching and they're proud, because even though they had that one moment which was quite difficult for me to swallow, they still helped me. And hopefully they're in a better place today. So it's really about trying to, when I'm doing my job and I'm meeting people, I'm really, really trying to be positive, be encouraging. Again, about shining I have this tattoo from a quote from Marianne Williamson, where she speaks about how our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And at the end of the quote, she talks about we should not shrink ourselves to make the person next to us feel comfortable. In anything, you should be as bright as you can, as positive as you can, and as light as you can to encourage the people around you to do the same. So that's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be a positive.
I'm losing my suit after this, so you've inspired. I want to take both questions, and we'll call it a day there. But so this first lady, and then you can answer both. Please go ahead. Please say your name and.
Thank you. This is Özlem from Istanbul, Turkey. I would love to hear a bit about your mother. I know your father is your hero, but yeah. This mitochondria thing is a big thing. You'll probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. If we go for the other lady, please.
My mom is my best friend. The reason I didn't bring her up is just. Well, there wasn't a reason I didn't bring her up. I think just because we were talking. I lived with my mum till I was 8 or 9, and then I moved with my dad. For my mum to have given me up to go to live with my dad was a really difficult decision for her. But my dad came along and he's like, look, I think I can create a better opportunity for our kid, but he needs to come and live with me. And so I did. And as I said, I spend a lot of time with my mum today. I speak to her pretty much every day. We party together. We travel the world together. I've got, on my mum's side, I have 2 sisters, and they have their kids. So we do way, way more than I do with my dad, for example. But for example, I do sports with my dad. My dad's very, he's competitive like me. And as a kid, he'd never let me win anything. And I'm pretty sure I'll be the same with my nephews or nieces. I'm never gonna let them win, being competitive. But and then my mum was really the person who sat down with me and read books with me, helped me catch up on the things that I struggled at school, for example, gave me that confidence that I felt was being taken away from me. I wasn't a confident kid I wasn't a confident kid at all. I was very, very shy. And the more I got I felt that pressure, I felt like I really went more and more into my shell. And my mum was the one that kind of tried to pull me out always. So she, for me, is the most important person in the world. And she's always been someone that genuinely likes to sit in the background. As I said, it was really difficult for her because my dad remarried, and on that I was racing with my dad, and my stepmom was involved in everything. There was a really difficult time for me when I went to an award ceremony I think I was 12, and they said, can Lewis's mum and dad come up to the stage? And my stepmom and my dad stood up, and I was like, yeah, but my mum's over here. They're both my mum, but my mum, that's my mum. And it was such an awkward time for me. And if I'm really honest, up until I was at least 20, 23, mid-20s, I was still struggling with this balance between my parents, Spend one Christmas with one side of the family, spend the next Christmas with the other or something. One parent would come to the race and would feel neglected. So trying to find the balance has been the biggest issue. But I think my mum has been the best in really putting her own emotions and opinions aside about the other parent, for example, to put me first. So, my love and appreciation hurts the guys.
One final question.
So I'm a mother of 2 girls, and every day they come up to me and they want to do something new. So today is gymnastics, tomorrow it's horse riding. And I want to know, when did you decide and when did you figure out that was what you were going to do? And did you want to stop? And how much is pushing too much? Because I always worry that if I push too much, that I'm going to make them hate it. And I never know what the right balance is. And I would love to know, you said you love music and this, and I would love to know when you knew what you were doing.
Great question.
That's a great question. I think today there are parents that you want them to do so well, so badly yourself, that it can sometimes be a little bit much. I definitely felt that occasionally with my dad, and the pressure was, I had a lot of pressure as a kid, he wanted me to do well at school, but he also wanted me to succeed at the races, and I'm struggling to do both of these, and he couldn't understand, It's just like, work harder. I'm doing everything I could possibly can. I was fortunate because I started watching Formula One on the weekends with my dad, and I wanted to either be Superman or Ayrton Senna. And I was really lucky I had a role model I saw Ayrton, and he was kind of I want to do what he's doing. But I had no, that was when I was 5. I had no idea that I was going to start karting when I was 8. So, my dad, we just kind of stumbled across it. And my dad's like, oh, this is something he's into. And there was never a moment, he never forced me to race. He knew that I just loved doing it. But I think for kids today, I think it's just about, if I was a parent, it's just putting lots of tools, giving them every opportunity possible, and helping them really choose on their own, but encouraging them really. And when they're doing it and then struggling, for example, encouraging them, no, you can get through it, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I would say really for your kids, I think they're really exploring themselves and their likes, but I think it's definitely, I think kids can't do it on their own. The parents really are the backbone of their future, As well, you've got to obviously provide, put a roof over the head, and you've got to provide all the support and live your own life. But yeah, exactly. But I think just encouraging that extra bit of encouragement, and really, ultimately, your parents, you are also a little bit of the rudder. If you let them run loose, they'll go all over the place. So really kind of, okay, this is the one you should really focus on. This, you seem to be good at this. Maybe let's put some more effort into that direction, maybe.
Lewis, one final question for me, because we're in the UAE, we're in
I'm
Dubai.
relaxed. I was late, so sorry if I made you guys sit here too long.
No, not at all. You travel the world, because Formula One is around the world. You come to the UAE and Dubai. Do you have any message for Dubai? Do you like Dubai? What do you enjoy about racing here? And what is the track like?
So one of the best things about my job is I get to travel around the world. I've been so fortunate to explore. I remember doing geography at school and looking at all these different locations. And again, I didn't have any set goals like one day I'm going to go to these, but I never even imagined that I would get the opportunity to travel, experience different foods and cultures. And so when I am traveling, more so now, I'm really taking the time to get into the culture. So I came to Dubai in 2006. I was lucky to come here for Christmas, and it was a lot, way less built than it is. I mean, what you guys have, what they've created here is just phenomenal. And I'm actually I got this race, my first race next week. Straight after that, because I have a race in Bahrain, I'm coming here for a few days and I'll train. And so it's a very peaceful place. The people are so welcoming. It's one of the I think it's probably one of the places I feel most safe. And as I said, the people really do go out their way to make you, and the weather's great, the food is incredible. I personally, when I come here, I like to try and see the culture, and often that bit of culture is when you go out to the desert and you've got the camels, you've got they build the huts, they've got a bit of the music. I like seeing that and trying the real food. I struggle to feel the food in the city. So yeah, and the racetrack, which is obviously where you got Abu Dhabi, is incredible. It has the best facilities of every Grand Prix. Obviously, it starts in kind of the sunset and goes into the night. It's the best ending of a year because I mean they put on the biggest show. I don't think anyone else can host. They're the greatest hosts by far. Everyone's trying to keep up with them, but they just can't. So yeah. Everyone
was very generous earlier today when they took out their phones and they tweeted and they Instagrammed saying this is the best education conference in the world. Did I hear that right? A lot of notifications about that. And so in terms of the use of social media, and you're an avid user of it, I see. I mean, you have a lot of followers, you have a lot of likes. I grapple with my own kids, and the use of social media. What advice do you have for parents when it comes to the use of social media? You're trying to create a brand that people all around the world follow. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that question.
Social media is there's lots of great things about social media. The best times for me have been when I'm trying to, because I'm traveling, it keeps my social life going. So with my friends, that's probably the most valuable part for me is, I get to see what my friends are up to without having to pick up the phone. Or you might see something and you'll message them, and it really keeps, even with my mom, she's following me on Snapchat or whatever, and she's saying, oh, I see what you're wearing today, or whatever it may be, so then it helps create dialogue. But also, I think in today's world, is a really unusual place where people feel that social media is a way of getting validation for success. And I don't think social media it doesn't mean success. Having more numbers than the person next to you doesn't mean you're more successful or you're more popular. I personally don't feel. And I think when you walk around, you see kids that just all they're doing is look on their phones, and they're missing a lot of the other things that are going on. So, I would try not to personally encourage it too much. A little bit of everything is good, but too much also can be distracting. And just from my experience of having my social media, I mean, I'm trying to share part of my my world and my journey, because if you saw the experiences that I get to see, it's not trying to put them in your face. It's actually trying to show you that it's possible. I came from a council house in Stevenage, and now I'm having lunch with the Queen, and I'm sitting with Nelson Mandela, and I'm getting to experience these things that I'm so incredibly grateful for, but just trying to give some inspiration. So, but it is a very difficult tool to use. You know, you can show everything and then get in trouble. So trying to find the right balance is what I'm constantly faced with every day. But I never thought in a million years that I'd have anyone following me to a Grand Prix, being at my hotel, or being at the racetrack supporting me. I never thought that would ever happen. As a kid, you just want to race cars. You just want to do the fun stuff and play. And I didn't think that I had no idea I had this responsibility, which I'm grateful for now. And I feel like I'm growing all the time in how to utilize that and be that positive inspiration. But it's great to see all of you here. I'm sure there's so many people at the conference here. But again, I just want to acknowledge all the teachers, everyone, and also the organizers. I think to have this event, I think it's really great to give something back to the teachers, because I couldn't be a teacher. When I meet, my patience is much worse than what would it be for you. I think, but when I meet kids, young racing drivers that come up to me now and want to say, I want to be racing drivers, I love giving trying to teach them or encourage them. And when I'm older, in the next years, I would love at one stage to be able to find the next me, for example. I would love to be able to find the next kid who's coming from nowhere, rather than, there's all these wealthy kids that are going to have the opportunity. I want to find someone that's coming from under a rock somewhere with a family and find some raw talent. It's going to be really difficult, but I think that'll be a great journey for me, and it'd be pretty neat to see someone one day be where I am.
So we have a prize called the Global Teacher Prize that is taking place on Sunday night, where we give $1 million to one teacher, and the last recipient of it is a Canadian lady called Maggie McDonnell. I don't know if you're in the room, Maggie, but Maggie is a PE teacher. And everyone looked a little bit aghast when we gave a PE teacher instead of a science teacher or a maths teacher. But the sports are important. But I want to call upon one specific person, because I know you put your hand up, and there's Eartha Pond at the back over there. Eartha is a PE teacher. Eartha, yes, I called you. Eartha is from London. She's one of the best teachers in the world. She's in our top 50. And she's actually a football player. She plays for, is it Chelsea at the moment, Eartha? Tottenham.
There's a few people like, yeah, and some people like,
So
I'm a gooner, so.
Hey.
Yeah.
Eartha, you had a question for Lewis? Great question.
Good question. I think ultimately, my viewpoint was when, for example, just from my experience as a racing driver, there are so many drivers that have lots of talent, but work harder and overtake those who have maybe a little bit more talent than them. I was kind of the thought that whatever the amount of talent I have, I'm going to work double as hard as the other driver, so that I'm just going to raise that bar higher than the others. So it's really just, as I said, I think we all have a certain amount of potential within us, but you can make that, by building a bigger foundation, by working harder, you can make that rise higher than it would be if you didn't put the effort in. It's difficult to find the words, but does that make sense? Or not? You can help me with the wording, maybe. Yeah? Mission statement is, my mission statement is to dare to be the greatest. I want to be the greatest in what I do. And I feel like if I apply myself the way I have, to my career up until today, and the other things that I will face when I'm coming up, when I retire, for example, I feel like if I apply myself the way I have to the driver I am today, I feel like I can conquer anything. And I feel like I can really be great in other areas where, as I said, lots of people who are in my sport will say, you're not going to be able to succeed outside this world. I'm going to prove them wrong. And I'm going to do some great things beyond it. And hopefully I always have this mindset about this vision of a lake. And when you drop a pebble in the lake, you create ripples. I want to be one of those, the pebbles or the stone that helps create a ripple and encourage other people to do the same thing. I might have to change it now if Tottenham's strapped on.
On that note, please join me in thanking Lewis Hamilton. Just come out and